The fateful rattle sliced through the summer stillness as Zara Rosenthal placed her boot in exactly the wrong place. One moment she was standing tall, gazing across the endless prairie toward her newly purchased homestead. The next, searing pain shot up her calf as needle-like fangs punctured her skin through her thin cotton stocking. Nebraska Territory, 1867, Zara's scream echoed across the empty expanse as she stumbled backward, catching sight of the Diamondback's retreating form. The pain was immediate and intense, a burning sensation that spread rapidly from her ankle upward. Her vision blurred as she clutched at her leg, the basket of provisions she'd carried from town tumbling into the tall grass. "Help!" she cried, though she knew it was futile. Her nearest neighbor was at least 2 miles away, and the town of North Platte lay 5 miles behind her. She'd been foolish to walk alone, but the day had been so beautiful, and she'd been eager to return to her small claim after purchasing supplies. The venom worked quickly. Zara felt her throat tightening as she collapsed onto the ground, her breathing becoming labored. The prairie around her, once so beautiful with its waving grasses and wildflowers, now seemed a vast, uncaring wilderness that would silently witness her death. From seemingly nowhere, the thunder of hoofbeats approached. Through her increasingly unfocused vision, Zara saw a rider approaching at a gallop, the silhouette of a man atop a powerful chestnut horse. "Madam, Madam, can you hear me?" The voice was deep, concerned, and grew clearer as the man dismounted in a fluid motion and knelt beside her. "Snake," Zara managed to gasp, pointing weakly toward her ankle where 2 puncture wounds were visible, the skin around them already angry and swollen. "Rattler got you, huh?" The stranger's face came into focus, sun-weathered and framed by sandy brown hair, with eyes the color of the prairie sky. "I'm Cole Callahan. Don't you worry, miss, I've dealt with snake bites before." Without hesitation, Cole tore a strip from his own shirt and fashioned a tourniquet above her wound. His movements were swift but gentle as he removed a knife from his belt. "This is gonna hurt, but it's necessary," he warned before making a small incision across the bite marks. Zara cried out as he bent down and began to suck the venom from the wound, spitting repeatedly into the grass. "You need shelter and care," he said after he'd done all he could in the field. "Your homestead nearby," Zara nodded weakly, pointing toward a small cabin visible in the distance. With surprising tenderness for his rugged appearance, Cole lifted her into his arms and carried her to his horse. "I'm Zara Rosenthal," she managed through gritted teeth as he placed her carefully in the saddle. "Miss Rosenthal, I'm going to get you home and tend to that wound proper," Cole replied, swinging up behind her and steadying her trembling body against his chest. "Just hold on." The ride to Zara's homestead was mercifully short. Her modest cabin stood alone against the vastness of the Nebraska prairie, a testament to her determination to make a life for herself after losing her parents to influenza back east. Cole carried her inside and laid her gently on her narrow bed. "Do you live alone out here?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern as he searched for clean cloths and water. "Yes," Zara whispered, fighting to stay conscious. "Came west 6 months ago to claim my land." "That's mighty brave for a woman on her own," Cole remarked, finding a basin and filling it with water from her pump. He worked methodically, cleaning the wound again and applying a poultice of herbs he retrieved from his saddlebag. "I'm not usually so careless," she managed, wincing as he wrapped her ankle in a clean bandage. "Rattlers can surprise anyone," Cole said kindly. "I've been riding these plains for 15 years and still give him a wide berth when I can." As darkness fell, Zara's condition worsened. Fever gripped her, and her breathing grew shallow. Cole remained by her side, placing cool cloths on her forehead and coaxing her to drink water whenever she stirred. Through her fevered haze, Zara was vaguely aware of his constant presence, his gentle hands, his soothing voice, and the strange comfort of having someone care for her after months of fierce independence. Whenever consciousness returned, she found him there, his expression etched with concern. Why are you helping me?" she asked during one lucid moment, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole's weathered face softened. "Out here we look after one another, it's the code of the West. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "I couldn't leave a lady in distress. My mother raised me better than that." "Thank you," Zara murmured before drifting back into fitful sleep, For 3 days, Cole Callahan never left Zara's side. He tended her wound, prepared simple meals from her meager provisions, and even cared for her small flock of chickens and lone milk cow. He slept in her rocking chair, alert to her every movement and need. On the morning of the 4th day, Zara awoke with a clear head for the first time since the bite. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's small window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. She turned her head to find Cole dozing in the chair beside her bed, his hat tipped forward over his eyes, his long legs stretched out before him. She studied him in the quiet moment, the strong line of his jaw covered in several days' growth of beard, the capable hands that had so carefully tended her wound, the worn leather vest over his faded blue shirt. There was something both rugged and gentle about him that stirred something within her. As if sensing her gaze, Cole stirred and pushed his hat back, his blue eyes immediately finding hers. When he saw she was awake and alert, a genuine smile transformed his face. "Well, good morning, Miss Rosenthal. Looks like you've decided to rejoin the land of the living." "Thanks to you," Zara replied, her voice still weak but steadier than before. "I don't know how to repay your kindness, Mr. Callahan." "Cole, please," he corrected, moving to pour her a cup of water, "and there's no debt. Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone," Zara countered, accepting the water gratefully. "Most would have ridden on by, especially for a stranger." She attempted to sit up and winced at the sharp pain in her leg. "Easy now," Cole cautioned, gently supporting her back with one strong arm. "That leg's going to be tender for a while yet. The swelling's down considerably, but you shouldn't be putting weight on it for at least another week." Zara's independence flared. "A week, but my animals, my garden." "I'll help," Cole said simply. "I was passing through anyway, heading north to deliver some horses, nothing pressing that can't wait." "I couldn't possibly ask you to, you didn't ask," he interrupted with a gentle smile. "I'm offering. Besides, I'd rest easier knowing you were fully recovered before I moved on." There was something in his straightforward manner that disarmed Zara's protests. After months of relying solely on herself, the prospect of assistance, even temporary, was both foreign and unexpectedly welcome. "Then I accept your help, Cole," she said finally. "But only if you'll let me pay you for your time." A slight frown crossed his features. "That's not necessary." "It is to me," Zara insisted. "My independence means everything. I don't take charity." Cole studied her for a moment, respect evident in his gaze. "How about a trade, then? I help you recover and tend your homestead, and you provide meals and a place to rest my head at night. Beats sleeping under the stars, and I reckon you cook better than I do." Zara couldn't help but laugh, though it sent a twinge of pain through her leg. "You haven't tasted my cooking yet. You might regret that bargain." "I'll take my chances," Cole replied with a grin that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Over the next days, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Cole would rise early to milk Zara's cow, tend to her chickens, and work in her small vegetable garden. He made repairs to her fence and roof that she'd been meaning to address but hadn't found time for. In the afternoons, he would help her to the porch where she could sit in the sunshine, her injured leg propped on a stool. Zara, for her part, directed him around her property and prepared meals as she grew stronger. Despite her initial jest, she was indeed a capable cook, transforming simple ingredients into satisfying fare that Cole claimed was the best he'd eaten in months of trail riding. Their conversations flowed easily as they shared their stories. Cole told her of growing up on a small ranch in Colorado Territory, losing his father to a cattle rustler's bullet when he was 16, and taking to horse trading to support his mother and younger sister. Zara spoke of her childhood in Philadelphia, her father's law practice, and how their deaths had left her with enough money to journey west, but not enough to establish herself in the society she'd once known. "Why Nebraska?" Cole asked one evening as they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Most Eastern ladies looking for a fresh start head to California or Oregon." Zara's expression softened with memory. "My father loved reading about the West. He subscribed to every journal and newspaper that carried stories about the territories. The prairie always fascinated him, most its vastness, its potential." She gestured toward the horizon. "I wanted to see it for myself, to build something on land that seemed limitless." Cole nodded in understanding. The first time I rode across the plains, I felt something similar, like I could breathe for the first time. Exactly, Zara agreed, surprised and pleased by his comprehension. Everyone thought I was mad to come alone, but I couldn't explain that feeling of possibility. It takes a special kind of courage to follow that feeling, Cole observed, his eyes on her face rather than the sunset. Most folks just talk about their dreams, you're living yours. Their gazes met, and something electric passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their different backgrounds. Zara felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with her recovering health. As the days passed, Zara's strength returned. The angry red streaks that had climbed her leg receded, and the swelling diminished until only a purplish mark remained where the fangs had struck. Cole continued to change her bandages daily, his touch gentle and professional, though Zara found herself increasingly aware of the warmth of his hands on her skin. 10 days after the snakebite, Zara took her first tentative steps without support, hobbling carefully across the cabin floor while Cole watched attentively, ready to catch her if she faltered. "You're healing well," he observed with approval. "Another week and you'll hardly know it happened, save for the scar." "Thanks to your care," Zara replied, making her way back to her chair by the fireplace. "I've been thinking, Cole, you mentioned needing to continue north soon. How much longer do you think you can delay your business?" A shadow crossed his face. "I sent word to my buyer in Valentine explaining the situation. He was understanding enough, but you're right, I should be moving on in the next day or two." Zara nodded, ignoring the unexpected pang in her chest at the thought of his departure. "Of course. You've already done far more than anyone could expect." Cole studied her face. "Will you be all right here alone? The nearest neighbor is quite a distance." "I managed before you arrived," Zara reminded him with more confidence than she felt. "I'll manage again." That evening, their conversation was more subdued than usual. Cole spoke of the horses. He was delivering 4 trained quarter horses for a rancher expanding his property, while Zara described her plans to increase her garden and perhaps acquire some sheep the following spring. They were discussing the wool market when a distant rumble of thunder interrupted them. Cole rose from the table and moved to the window, his expression growing serious as he observed the western sky. "That's no ordinary thunderstorm," he said grimly. "The clouds have a green tinge. Could be a tornado brewing." Zara joined him at the window, alarmed by the rapidly darkening horizon. Having spent most of her life in Philadelphia, she had little experience with the violent prairie storms that could form with frightening speed. "What should we do?" she asked, unconsciously gripping his arm. "Your root cellar, is it sturdy?" Cole asked, covering her hand with his own. Zara nodded. "My neighbor Mr. Jensen helped me dig it deep last autumn. Said it would keep my vegetables cool in summer and unfrozen in winter." "It might save our lives tonight," Cole replied, already moving to gather lanterns and blankets. "We should head down there now before it hits. These storms move fast." Within minutes, the wind had picked up dramatically, howling around the small cabin like a living thing. Cole helped Zara navigate the steep steps to the root cellar, her injured leg still tender as they descended into the cool darkness. They had barely closed the heavy wooden doors above them when the first violent gust hit, rattling the structure ominously. In the confined space, illuminated only by the soft glow of a single lantern, they sat side by side on a rough wooden bench, listening to the storm's fury. The tornado didn't touch down directly on the homestead, but its proximity was terrifying nonetheless. Objects thudded against the ground above them, and at one point, a terrible cracking sound suggested a tree had fallen nearby. Throughout it all, Cole's arm remained protectively around Zara's shoulders, a solid anchor in the chaos. She found herself leaning into his strength, drawing comfort from his presence in a way she hadn't allowed herself to depend on anyone since her parents' deaths. "You all right?" he asked softly during a momentary lull in the wind. "Yes," Zara answered, surprised to discover it was true despite the terror of the storm. "I'm glad you're here, Cole." His arm tightened slightly around her. "So am I." The storm raged for hours, holding them captive in the cellar well past midnight. They talked quietly to distract themselves about books they'd read, places they'd seen, simple dreams they harbored. In that intimate darkness, Zara found herself sharing thoughts she'd scarcely acknowledged even to herself. Sometimes I wake up and wonder if I've made a terrible mistake, she confessed. If I'm fooling myself that I can truly make it alone out here. Cole was quiet for a moment before responding. Everyone doubts themselves, Zara, even those who seem most confident. The question is whether the dream is worth fighting through those doubts. And is your dream worth it? All this traveling, never settling in one place, he sighed, his breath warm against her hair. I've been asking myself that more often lately, especially these past 2 weeks. There was something in his tone that made Zara's heart beat faster, but before she could question him further, the winds above finally began to subside. They waited another hour before cautiously emerging from the cellar into the gray light of early dawn. Zara gasped at the sight that greeted them. While her cabin remained largely intact, her small barn had lost half its roof, and the chicken coop had been entirely demolished. Thankfully, the animals had huddled inside the barn and appeared unharmed, though thoroughly frightened. Well, Cole said after surveying the damage, looks like my departure will be delayed a bit longer. He turned to Zara with a wry smile. Can't leave you with a barn that won't keep the rain out. Relief flooded through her, both at the relatively minor damage and at the prospect of Cole's continued presence. I wouldn't want to impose further, it's no imposition, he interrupted gently. Truth is, I'm not in any hurry to leave. Their eyes met, and the honesty in his gaze made Zara catch her breath. Something was changing between them, had been changing since that first day when he'd found her collapsed on the prairie. The work of repairing the storm damage gave them purpose and further reason to operate as a team. Cole rode into North Platte to purchase lumber and supplies, returning with not only building materials but also news that several homesteads in the area had been completely destroyed. We were fortunate, Zara observed as they worked together to rebuild the chicken coop. Her leg was strong enough now that she could assist with the simpler tasks, handing Cole nails and holding boards steady while he hammered. Very, he agreed, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. The June heat was building as midday approached. The Jensen place about 5 miles east lost everything, communities organizing a barn raising for them next week. We should help, Zara said immediately. They were kind to me when I first arrived. Cole smiled at her use of we but didn't comment on it. I'd be glad to stay for that if you're sure you want to attend. Your leg is healing well, Zara finished for him. I can at least help with food preparation even if I can't hammer or lift. As they worked side by side in the days that followed, Zara found herself increasingly aware of Cole's presence, the way sunlight caught in his hair, the careful precision of his movements, the deep timbre of his laugh when she said something that amused him. She caught him watching her too, his gaze lingering when he thought she wouldn't notice. One evening, as they sat on her newly repaired porch enjoying the cooler air after a day of labor, Cole broke a comfortable silence. Zara, I've been meaning to ask you something. Her heart quickened at his serious tone. Yes, the horses I was delivering. I sent word to the buyer that I'd been delayed by the storm. He replied that he's found another source and released me from our agreement. Cole ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. What I'm asking is, would you mind if I stayed on a while longer? There's still work to be done around your place and yes, Zara interrupted, then blushed at her eagerness. That is, I'd welcome your continued help, Cole. The smile that spread across his face warmed her more thoroughly than the evening sun. Good, that's good. The following Sunday they attended church services in North Platte together, the first time Zara had been to town since the snakebite. She was conscious of the curious glances and whispers as they entered the small wooden church together. As one of the few single women in the area, she'd attracted attention since her arrival, but appearing with Cole Callahan at her side created a fresh wave of interest. After the service, several townspeople approached to inquire about her recovery and introduce themselves to Cole. Mrs. Harper, the general store owner's wife and unofficial town gossip, was particularly interested. Mr. Callahan, what fortunate timing that you were passing by when Miss Rosenthal needed help, she observed with a meaningful glance between them. Will you be staying in North Platte long? Before Cole could answer, Zara spoke up. Mr. Callahan has kindly offered to help with repairs to my homestead following the storm. We're very fortunate the damage wasn't worse. Mrs. Harper's eyebrows rose at the we, but she merely nodded. Indeed, Providence works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? First sending Mr. Callahan to save you from that snakebite, then keeping him around for the storm. As they rode back to the homestead in Zara's small wagon, Cole chuckled. I believe we're the subject of considerable speculation now. Zara felt her cheeks warm. I'm sorry. Small towns and their gossip don't apologize, Cole interrupted gently. I'm not bothered by their talk, are you? She considered the question carefully. No, she admitted finally, though I've always been protective of my reputation. As you should be, he agreed. You've worked hard to establish yourself here. I wouldn't want to compromise that. His consideration touched her. Thank you, but I think my reputation can withstand being seen with a respectable horse trader who saved my life. Cole's laughter rang out across the prairie. Respectable horse trader? That might be the first time anyone's called me that. The Jensen barn raising the following Saturday brought most of the community together in a display of frontier solidarity. While Cole joined the men in raising the barn's framework, Zara helped the women prepare a massive midday meal for the workers. Her leg still pained her after prolonged standing, but she was determined to contribute. So, Miss Rosenthal, Mrs. Peterson said as they rolled out pie crusts together, you and Mr. Callahan seem to have grown quite close. Zara focused intently on her task. He's been very kind to help with my recovery and repairs. The older woman murmured. My late husband started out helping me fix my father's wagon wheel. Sometimes the best partnerships begin with one person in need and another offering assistance. We're not, Zara began, then paused, unsure how to define exactly what they were to each other. Mrs. Peterson patted her hand sympathetically. It's all right, dear. The heart knows what the mind hasn't admitted yet. Throughout the day, Zara found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Cole as he worked. She admired his easy strength as he lifted heavy beams, and the way he collaborated smoothly with men he'd just met. He seemed to belong here in a way she was still striving for after 6 months. Late in the afternoon, as the barn's basic structure stood completed and the community gathered to share food and congratulations, Cole found Zara sitting alone at the edge of the gathering, resting her leg. Mind if I join you? He asked, holding 2 plates of food. Please, she replied, making room for him on the bench. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the celebration around them. Children played tag between groups of adults, and someone had brought out a fiddle, prompting impromptu dancing on the packed earth of the farmyard. This is what I love about the West, Cole said, nodding toward the scene. People come together when it matters. Everyone contributed what they could today: labor, food, materials. In a week, they built what would have taken the Jensens months on their own. It's beautiful, Zara agreed. Different from Philadelphia, where we knew our neighbors but kept a certain distance. Do you miss it? The city, Zara considered the question. I miss certain conveniences. Proper shops, libraries, theater, but there's something honest about life here that I've grown to love. She looked at him directly. The people here may gossip, but they also notice when you're in trouble and come to your aid without hesitation. Like a certain horse trader finding a snake-bitten lady on the prairie, Cole teased gently. Exactly like that, Zara replied, her tone serious despite his levity. I never properly thanked you, Cole, not just for saving my life, but for staying, for caring. His expression softened as he held her gaze. Zara, Cole, a voice interrupted. They looked up to find one of the local ranchers approaching. We need another strong back for moving that last timber. Can you lend a hand? Cole hesitated, glancing at Zara. Go, she encouraged with a smile. We can talk later. As he joined the men for the final task of the day, Zara watched him go with a curious mixture of emotions. In just over 3 weeks, this man had become essential to her in ways she hadn't anticipated. The thought of his eventual departure, which they both knew must come, regardless of his extended stay, created an ache in her chest that she couldn't ignore. The ride home that evening was quiet, both of them tired from the day's activities. When they reached Zara's homestead in the gathering dusk, Cole helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. I'll see to the horse, he said softly. You should rest your leg. Zara nodded, reluctant to break the moment but aware of her body's fatigue. Thank you. I'll prepare some tea. Inside the cabin, as she moved about her small kitchen, Zara found herself thinking about Mrs. Peterson's words. Had she been developing feelings for Cole beyond friendship and gratitude? The answer, she realized with startling clarity, was unquestionably yes. But what of his feelings? He'd extended his stay, worked tirelessly on her behalf, and treated her with unfailing respect. Yet he'd made no explicit declaration, and Zara was too proud and perhaps too afraid of rejection to ask directly. When Cole entered the cabin a short while later, he found her standing by the stove, lost in thought, the kettle boiling unnoticed. "Zara," he said gently, moving to remove the kettle from the heat. "Everything all right?" She turned to him, suddenly determined to know where they stood. "Cole, may I ask you something?" "Anything," he replied, his blue eyes serious in the lamplight. "Why did you really stay?" "After I was well enough to manage on my own, even before the storm, you could have continued your journey." Cole was silent for a long moment, his gaze never leaving her face. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and earnest. "When I found you on the prairie that day, something changed for me. I've spent years traveling from place to place, never staying long enough to form attachments. It was easier that way after losing my father. No roots meant no pain when it was time to move on." He took a step closer. "But watching you fight to recover, seeing your determination to build something here on your own terms, it woke something in me, a longing for what I've been avoiding." Zara's breath caught in her throat. "And what's that?" "Connection, belonging, a place and a person to come home to." Cole reached out, tentatively taking her hand in his. "I stayed because I wanted to know you, Zara Rosenthal, because every day in your company made me less eager to leave." Her heart pounded as she looked up at him. "I don't want you to leave either," she whispered. Something in Cole's expression shifted, a tension releasing as he gently drew her closer. "Then maybe I won't," he murmured before lowering his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. When Zara responded, stepping into his embrace and sliding her arms around his neck, it deepened into something more profound, a promise, a beginning. When they finally parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for weeks. Why didn't you?" Zara asked, her fingers playing with the hair at the nape of his neck. "Because you were vulnerable, because I didn't want you to feel obligated out of gratitude." He pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "I needed to be sure what I was feeling, what we were feeling, was real. And now?" "Now I'm sure," he said simply. "I've never been more sure of anything." That night marked a transition in their relationship. Though Cole continued to sleep in the small lean-to he'd constructed behind the cabin, propriety still mattered in their small community. Their days were filled with shared work, conversation, and increasingly affectionate touches. They spoke openly of feelings and future possibilities, learning each other's hopes and fears in the process. 2 weeks after the barn raising, as summer reached its peak, Cole received a letter from his mother in Colorado. He read it silently at the breakfast table, his expression growing serious. "Bad news?" Zara asked, concerned by his furrowed brow. "My mother's health is declining," he replied, folding the letter carefully. "My sister writes that she's been asking for me." Zara reached across the table to take his hand. "You need to go to her." Cole nodded, his eyes troubled. "I should, but I don't want to leave you." "I understand," Zara assured him. "Family comes first, Cole. I've recovered fully, and the homestead is in better condition than before thanks to your work." He was quiet for a long moment, seemingly wrestling with a decision. Finally, he met her gaze directly. "Come with me." The invitation caught her off guard. "To Colorado?" "Yes." His grip on her hand tightened. "I know it's sudden and you have your homestead here, but Zara, I love you. These past weeks have shown me what life could be like with you by my side. I don't want to lose that." The declaration of love, though not entirely unexpected given their growing closeness, still sent a jolt through Zara's heart. "Cole, I love you too," she admitted, joy mixing with practical considerations. "But my land we could return," he suggested earnestly. "After seeing my mother, or we could build something new in Colorado. My family's ranch is small but good land, or we could find another place entirely." He took a deep breath. "What matters to me is that we're together." Zara thought of the dreams that had brought her west: independence, purpose, building something of her own. But in the weeks since Cole had entered her life, those dreams had expanded to include companionship, partnership, love. I'd need to arrange for someone to watch over the place, she said slowly, and decide what to do with the animals. Cole's face brightened with hope. Is that a yes? It's a let me think about it properly, Zara replied with a small smile. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Of course, he agreed, raising her hand to his lips. Take all the time you need, I won't leave until you've decided. For 3 days, Zara contemplated her options carefully. She spoke with her nearest neighbors, the Jensens, who agreed to keep an eye on her property should she leave temporarily. She inventoried her possessions, considering what could be sold, stored, or taken along. Most importantly, she examined her heart. On the 4th morning, she woke with the first light, her decision clear. She found Cole splitting wood outside, his shirt already damp with exertion in the early heat. I'll come with you to Colorado, she announced without preamble. Cole set down his axe, his face breaking into a radiant smile. You're sure? On one condition, Zara added, stepping closer. Before we leave, I want us to be married. His expression softened with emotion as he took her hands in his. Nothing would make me happier. Are you proposing to me, Zara Rosenthal? She laughed, a sound of pure joy. I suppose I am, though you're welcome to propose properly if your pride requires it. In response, Cole dropped to one knee right there in the dirt beside the woodpile. Zara, you've shown me what home truly means, not a place but a person. Will you marry me and build a life together wherever that may lead us? Yes, she answered without hesitation. Yes, I will. They were married the following Sunday in the small North Platte church, with the entire community in attendance. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, the celebration afterward warm and generous as neighbors contributed food, music, and well wishes. Mrs. Harper approached them during the festivities, her expression satisfied. I knew from the moment I saw you two together that Providence had plans, she declared. A snakebite seems an unusual blessing, but it brought you together, didn't it? Zara and Cole exchanged smiles. It certainly did, Zara agreed, leaning slightly against her new husband's sturdy frame. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, Cole added, his arm protective around Zara's waist. Though I'd prefer you avoid rattlesnakes in the future, Mrs. Callahan. The new name sent a thrill through Zara. Mrs. Callahan, a new identity to match her new life. 2 days later, they departed for Colorado, traveling in a small wagon loaded with essentials and pulling Zara's milk cow behind them. The journey would take weeks, but they faced it together, finding joy in shared experiences and deepening their bond with each passing day. The Colorado foothills welcomed them with spectacular vistas that took Zara's breath away. Cole's family ranch, nestled in a fertile valley with mountains rising majestically in the distance, was smaller than she'd imagined but beautiful in its setting. Cole's mother, Cole Callahan, was indeed unwell but rallied at the sight of her son and his new wife. A tiny woman with Cole's same blue eyes, she welcomed Zara with genuine warmth. He wrote to me about you, she confided when they had a moment alone. Said you were the bravest woman he'd ever met. I can see he wasn't exaggerating. I'm not sure bravery had much to do with it, Zara replied honestly. More like stubbornness and necessity. Eleanor laughed weakly. Those are just other words for the same quality, my dear. I'm glad he found you, or rather that you found each other. Cole's sister Mary and her husband Thomas ran the daily operations of the ranch. With 2 young children and another on the way, they were grateful for Cole's return and Zara's additional helping hands. As autumn approached, Eleanor's health stabilized somewhat, though it was clear her condition was chronic rather than acute. During a family dinner in late September, she broached the subject that had been on everyone's mind. Cole, Zara, she said, setting down her fork deliberately. I've been thinking about your situation. Mary and Thomas have made this ranch their home, and rightfully so after maintaining it these past years. Mother, there's no need, Cole began, but Eleanor raised a hand to stop him. Let me finish. This place isn't large enough for 2 families to thrive, not with the children growing, but I have a proposal. She looked between them earnestly. The adjoining property to the east, the old Miller place, has stood empty since John Miller passed last winter. His children moved to California years ago and have no interest in the land. It's for sale at a fair price. Zara and Cole exchanged glances. They had discussed their future repeatedly during their journey but reached no definite conclusion about where to settle. It's good land, Thomas added. Needs work, but the bones are solid, close enough that we could help each other but separate enough for privacy. What about your homestead in Nebraska? Mary asked Zara. I thought you might want to return there eventually. Zara considered the question thoughtfully. I claimed that land when I was alone and determined to prove myself. It served its purpose. She looked at Cole with a smile, but home isn't about proving anything anymore, it's about building something together. Cole squeezed her hand under the table. We'll ride over tomorrow and look at the Miller place, he decided. If it seems right, we'll consider it. The old Miller ranch did indeed have good bones, as Thomas had suggested. The cabin was larger than Zara's Nebraska homestead, with a stone fireplace and sturdy construction. The barn needed significant repairs, and the fences had suffered from neglect, but the land itself was promising a mix of grazing pasture and fertile ground for crops, with a clear creek running through the property. As they stood on a small rise overlooking the potential homestead, Cole wrapped his arms around Zara from behind, resting his chin on her head. What do you think? He asked softly. Could you be happy here? Zara leaned back against him, considering the landscape. It was different from the endless Nebraska prairie, more varied in terrain, embraced by mountains rather than open sky, but it had its own beauty, its own promise. I think I could be happy anywhere with you, she replied honestly. But yes, I can see us building a life here. Then let's do it, Cole said, turning her in his arms to face him. Let's make this our home. They purchased the Miller property the following week, using a combination of their savings. While the cabin required less work than anticipated, the outbuildings demanded considerable attention before winter set in. The entire Callahan family pitched in Cole and Thomas repairing the barn roof, while Zara and Mary sorted through abandoned implements to determine what could be salvaged. Eleanor, though physically limited, contributed her knowledge of local growing conditions and livestock management. Her health improved somewhat with the excitement of the new project and the joy of having her family close. By the first snowfall in November, the ranch, which they named Prairie View in homage to their meeting place, was habitable if not fully restored. Zara had established a cozy household within the cabin, adapting her independent homesteading skills to their shared domain. Cole had acquired a small herd of cattle and 2 breeding mares, the beginning of what he hoped would become a successful operation combining ranching and horse breeding. Their first winter as husband and wife passed in a blur of work, family gatherings, and the deep contentment of finding one's place in the world. Though the season brought challenges, heavy snows that isolated them for days, a brief illness that swept through the family at Christmas, the constant vigilance required to keep livestock alive in harsh conditions, they faced each difficulty together, emerging stronger for the experience. Spring came late to the Colorado foothills, but when it arrived, it brought renewal in more ways than one. The land reawakened with vibrant wildflowers and fresh grass. Eleanor's health improved with the warmer weather. And Zara discovered, with equal parts trepidation and joy, that she was expecting their first child. When she shared the news with Cole one evening, as they sat on their cabin porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. His eyes filled with wonder as he placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. A baby, he whispered, as if speaking too loudly might somehow make the miracle disappear. Our baby. Due in late autumn, according to my calculations, Zara confirmed, covering his hand with her own. Are you happy? Happy doesn't begin to describe it, Cole replied, gathering her carefully into his arms. Grateful, terrified, overwhelmed with love for you and this child we've created. He pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. Do you remember that day on the prairie? When the rattlesnake struck, Zara nodded against his chest. How could I forget? It was the worst and best day of my life. I've thought often about the chain of events that led me to that exact spot at that exact moment, Cole mused. If I'd left earlier that morning or taken a different route, we might never have met, Zara finished for him. Some might call it chance, Cole said softly, but I believe it was something more, something meant to be. As Zara's pregnancy progressed through the summer, their ranch flourished alongside their anticipation. The cattle herd increased with a successful calving season, and one of their mares produced a promising foal that Cole believed would fetch a good price when trained. Their garden yielded abundantly, and Zara preserved the harvest for the coming winter with Aliner's guidance. Their child arrived on a crisp October evening after a labor that tested Zara's considerable strength. Cole paced anxiously outside their bedroom while his mother and sister attended the birth, his prayers mixing with the sound of Zara's determined efforts within. When Mary finally called him inside, Cole entered to find Zara propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in a blanket Aliner had knitted. "Come meet your son," Zara invited, her voice tired but filled with wonder. With trembling hands, Cole accepted the tiny infant, marveling at the perfect miniature features that somehow combined his and Zara's in a unique new person. "He's beautiful," he whispered, overcome with emotion, "just like his mother." They named him William Thomas Callahan, after both their fathers, though Cole insisted he be called Will to distinguish him from Zara's late parent. That winter was especially harsh, with blizzards that isolated their ranch for weeks at a time. But within their cabin, warmed by the constant fire Cole maintained and the deeper warmth of their growing family, they found a contentment neither had dared imagine when they'd first met on that Nebraska prairie. Will proved to be a robust baby with his father's curious blue eyes and a determination that Cole insisted came directly from Zara. He thrived despite the challenging conditions, bringing joy not only to his parents but to his grandmother, whose health seemed to stabilize in the presence of her grandson's energy. On the anniversary of their wedding day, Cole surprised Zara with a special gift, a delicate gold locket containing a tiny portrait of Will on one side and a small coiled braid of prairie grass on the other. "From where we began," he explained as she examined the grass with puzzled delight. "I collected it when we returned briefly to your homestead before our wedding, to remember where we found each other." Zara's eyes filled with tears as she fastened the locket around her neck. "It's perfect," she said, touching it reverently, "our past and our future together in one place." "Just like us," Cole replied, drawing her into his arms. The years that followed brought both joys and sorrows as they built their life together. Will was joined by a sister, Aliner Rose, named for her grandmother who passed peacefully in her sleep just months before the girl's birth. 2 years later, twins Michael and Joseph completed their family, bringing the particular chaos and delight that only multiple babies can create. Prairie View Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Cole's reputation for quality horses spread throughout the territory, bringing buyers from as far as Denver and Cheyenne. Zara's practical management and agricultural knowledge ensured they weathered economic fluctuations better than many of their neighbors. They never forgot how their story began with a venomous bite that could have ended Zara's life, but instead began their shared journey. Each year on the anniversary of that day, they would sit together on their porch as the sun set, marveling at the unpredictable path that had led them to each other, and the life they'd built from that dangerous beginning. On one such evening, as their children played in the yard and the mountains stood purple against the twilight sky, Zara leaned her head against Cole's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me that day?" she asked softly. Cole's arm tightened around her waist. "No," he replied honestly, "because I believe I was always meant to find you, if not then, somehow, somewhere else." "Even so," Zara murmured, watching as Will, now 10, helped his 5-year-old sister climb onto the wooden swing Cole had built. "I'm grateful it happened just as it did." "Every moment led us here, even the rattlesnake," Cole teased gently. "Especially the rattlesnake," Zara confirmed with a smile, "though I could have done without the pain." "Some things are worth the suffering," Cole observed, his gaze taking in their thriving ranch, their healthy children, the life they'd created together. "And some people are worth never leaving." "I'm glad you stayed," Zara said, turning to meet his eyes, still as blue and honest as they'd been that first day on the prairie. "Always," Cole promised, bending to kiss her softly as the last light faded from the Colorado sky, illuminating the path they'd traveled from strangers to savior and survivor to husband and wife, a journey that began with danger but led to the deepest love either could have imagined. proving that sometimes the most perilous beginnings lead to the most beautiful destinations. As they entered their second decade together, Prairie View Ranch had grown into one of the most respected properties in the county. Cole's horse breeding business had expanded significantly, with buyers coming from as far as San Francisco for his carefully trained stock. Zara had developed a complementary business raising specialized herbs and medicinal plants, putting to good use the knowledge she'd gained after her own brush with venom. Their children flourished in the freedom and responsibility of ranch life. Will, at 16, had inherited his father's way with horses and his mother's quick intelligence. Alina Rose, 14, showed a remarkable talent for art, filling sketchbooks with detailed drawings of the ranch's animals and surrounding landscapes. The twins, Michael and Joseph, now 12, were inseparable partners in both mischief and industry, equally adept at completing their chores and finding creative ways to avoid them. On a warm summer evening, as the family gathered for dinner after a long day of haying, Will cleared his throat nervously. "Pa, Ma, I've been thinking about something important," he began, his voice deepening but still occasionally cracking with adolescence. Cole and Zara exchanged glances. "Go ahead, son," Cole encouraged. "Mr. Jensen wrote to me from North Platte," Will continued. "Says your old homestead is for sale again, Ma. The family that bought it from you is moving to Oregon." He straightened his shoulders. "I'd like your permission to claim it. To restore it and work the land." The request took them by surprise. Though they had maintained occasional correspondence with their former neighbors in Nebraska, they hadn't returned to North Platte since collecting the last of Zara's possessions years earlier. "That's a big step, Will," Zara said carefully. "You're still young and homesteading alone is challenging work." "I know," he replied earnestly. "But you did it, Ma. You were hardly older than I am now when you claimed that land." "And nearly died on it," Cole reminded him, his tone serious. "Without help arriving when it did." Will nodded. "I understand the risks, but I also know what you've taught me about working the land, caring for livestock, building something worthwhile." His gaze was steady, so like Cole's that Zara felt a pang of recognition. "I want to prove myself, like you both did." After sending the younger children to bed, Cole and Zara discussed their son's request late into the night. They weighed his readiness, the practical considerations, and their own emotions about his potential departure. "He's so young," Zara fretted, pacing their bedroom. "Younger than I was, really. But better prepared," Cole countered gently. "He's grown up watching us build this ranch, learning alongside us every step of the way." "Nebraska is so far," Zara whispered, the real fear emerging. "If he needs us." Cole drew her into his arms. "Then we'll go to him, just as we've always been there for each other. But Zara, we have to let him try. You of all people understand that need for independence, for proving oneself." In the morning, they called Will into Cole's study, where the important family decisions were always made. His face was anxious but determined as he stood before them. "We've decided," Cole began, his expression serious. "You can claim the homestead, but with conditions." Relief flooded Will's features. "Anything, name them." "First, you won't go alone," Zara stated firmly. "Your father will accompany you to help establish the basics, repair the cabin, rebuild fences, ensure you have what you need before winter." "Second," Cole continued, "you'll start with a proper foundation. We'll provide some cattle, 2 good horses, and enough supplies to see you through the first year if managed carefully." "Third," Zara added, "you'll write regularly, and if circumstances become difficult, you'll ask for help without pride getting in the way." Her voice softened. "That was a lesson I learned the hard way." Will's eyes shone with gratitude and excitement. "I promise all of that. Thank you for believing in me." As the family prepared for Will's departure, Zara found herself reflecting on the circle their lives had taken. The prairie that had nearly claimed her life would now be the site of her son's beginning. There was poetry in it and a certain rightness that soothed her maternal anxiety. The night before Cole and Will were to leave for Nebraska, Zara sat on their porch swing, watching the stars emerge. Cole joined her, wordlessly taking her hand in his. "I've been thinking about our journey," she said after a comfortable silence. "How a single moment a snake's strike changed everything." "For the better," Cole reminded her, squeezing her hand. "Absolutely," Zara agreed, "but it makes me wonder about Will's path. What moments will define his life?" Will someone be there for him when he needs them most? Cole considered this thoughtfully. We can't know that. All we can do is give him the tools to face whatever comes, just as my parents did for me and yours for you. He smiled softly in the darkness. And perhaps trust that the same providence that brought us together will watch over him too. Zara leaned against his shoulder, finding comfort in his steady presence as she had for nearly 20 years. When did you become so wise, Cole Callahan? Somewhere between pulling venom from your ankle and helping deliver our fourth child, he replied with a chuckle. Life has a way of teaching us what matters. The farewell the next morning was emotional but tempered with pride and excitement. Alina Rose presented her brother with a portfolio of sketches of their ranch, so you won't forget where home is. The twins had secretly carved him a wooden whistle to call for help if there are snakes. Even Zara managed to keep her tears at bay until the wagon disappeared over the horizon. Cole returned a month later, his face weathered from the journey but satisfied with what they'd accomplished. He described how they'd found Zara's old homestead in disrepair but structurally sound, how Will had worked tirelessly to restore it, and how the neighbors, some still remembering Zara, had welcomed him warmly. He's going to be fine, Cole assured her as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom. He has your determination and hopefully some of my common sense. Your common sense, Zara teased, tracing the familiar line of his jaw. Is that what you call riding directly toward a snake-bitten stranger instead of sensibly continuing on your way? That wasn't common sense, Cole admitted, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. That was the best instinct I ever followed. Life continued to unfold in expected and unexpected ways. Will's letters came regularly, describing his successes and challenges in Nebraska. Alina Rose's artistic talents led to an apprenticeship with a renowned landscape painter in Denver. The twins, growing into young men with different strengths but shared loyalty, became the backbone of Prairie View's operations as Cole and Zara gradually stepped back from the most demanding physical labor. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Zara with a journey not back to Nebraska as she might have expected, but further west to California, a place neither had seen. For 6 weeks they traveled, marveling at landscapes vastly different from their familiar mountains and prairies, and enjoying the rare luxury of time alone together. On a beach near San Francisco, watching the Pacific waves crash against the shore, Cole took Zara's hand, his touch as familiar and essential to her as her own heartbeat. Was it worth it? He asked, his voice carrying over the sound of the surf. All of it, the snakebite, leaving your homestead, building our life together. Zara looked at him, this man who had found her at her most vulnerable, who had tended her wound and never left her side, who had become her partner, lover, friend, and co-creator of a life more abundant than either could have imagined alone. Worth it doesn't begin to describe it, she replied, echoing his own words from long ago. It was necessary, it was fate, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Even the snakebite, Cole teased, an echo of their many conversations over the years. Especially the snakebite, Zara confirmed, leaning in to kiss him as the California sun set behind them, casting their still entwined figures in golden light, two souls bound by chance, choice, and a love that had proved as enduring as the prairie and as majestic as the mountains they called home.